What's up, everybody? Back in the shop again today with another project. Today we are going to be putting a roll cage on a Polaris Rs1. This is a customer's pretty clean, I believe this is 2018 Rs1, and we are going to be installing this Hauser Racing roll cage on the unit. So walking around this unit, I don't believe this is going to be a super difficult job. He does have some mirrors and a sound bar that I need to remove, but otherwise I believe this roll cage is going to come off there pretty easily. But regardless, I'll walk you guys through some of this stuff and any weird things that I find. You know, the snorkel things up here are going to have to come off. They get reattached to the new roll cage. Same with the roof and the shock reservoirs on each side here. Those all have to come off. But otherwise, this cage is a bolt-on. There's a bolt down here. Back behind this fender here, there's a couple of bolts. And then there's a couple bolts on the front down underneath the fender here too. So we'll start getting this off of here and get going on it. All right, first thing we're going to do to get this cage changed out is I'm going to take the roof off. There's some T40 Torx screws that hold this on. I think there's only 4, not sure. Alright, now we got to take the sound bar off there. This one is a 4mm Allen on this Boss unit. Okay, so we got the sound bar and the roof out of the way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the seat belt loose here. One thing to note about the seat belts is you should put some kind of a zip tie or something around the seat belt here to keep it from retracting all the way back down, because if it bottoms out, it can actually lock up and stay to where you can't get it back up. So make sure you do some kind of a clamp or something on this to keep it from moving and locking itself up. Then once I get this seat belt out of the way here, then I'll go and get these snorkels out of here. Get a loosen hose clamp down here at the bottom, and then there's appears to be a 10mm right there on each side to get that off of there. And then we'll be able to take the shock reservoirs off after that. So the bolt for the seat belt is a 17mm. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these fenders. There's a quick release here, a rubber strap down here, and a rubber strap at the back. And once you undo all those, you just kind of pull on it, and it all comes off in one big piece. Okay, so we're back at the back of the unit now, and what I'm going to do now is remove the reservoirs for the shocks and just kind of hang them down here somewhere where they're not going to get damaged. And then I've got to take this tray out here, which I think is just held in with the fasteners that hold these D-rings in, up top and down here. And then this tray should come out of here. And then we're ready to start unbolting the cage and get it off there. Alright, next thing we got to do is get these front panels off here. You just grab a hold of the inside and kind of peel them up like this. They've got some plastic push darts on the back side that hold it in there, so that will allow us access to get in here to these lower cage mount bolts down here. And since we have the fenders off in the back, we can get to these lower cage bolts here and this cage bolt here. I'm going to go ahead and take this off. take this all off the unit as one piece rather than disassembling it like Polaris ships it in a crate. I think it'll be a little easier that way for me. It's definitely less stuff to take apart, so I'm going to get started on pulling all this stuff off there. Alright, there we have it. The factory cage is removed. I'm sweating like a pig, and well, my idea of taking it off in one piece didn't work. It was just too bound up, and that cage is a little tweaked from the unit being rolled over before, so I don't know if that was really what was causing the issue or whether I just couldn't get the damn thing off there. But at any rate, the stock cage is off and it is ready for the new Hauser racing cage, which is laying over here on the bench. Now, I do not have the option of disassembling that roll cage at all. So that one's got to go on in one piece no matter what. So it might be a little difficult to do by myself, but I think if I just stand in the middle of it and like climb up into the dang Rs1 with the door open, I can probably set it down where it needs to be. So try it anyway. Alright, so a couple things to note. The cage is on now. A couple things to note after watching me wrestle with that thing is, you know, these aftermarket companies, they do their best to make things fit as best they can. Unfortunately, there are always going to be some differences in the way the cages fit, be it from welding the cages or, you know, every single one of these machines from Polaris and Yamaha and Can-Am, every single one of them is different, so they're not all going to fit the same anyway. So these aftermarket guys really do the best they can with this stuff, but man, sometimes you gotta struggle and fight with these things a little bit. You gotta use punches and screwdrivers and stuff to line up the bolt holes, and you know, sometimes you gotta pound on them with a rubber mallet and try not to damage the powder coat or anything like that. But man, it took me probably a good half hour, 45 minutes to get this Hauser cage on here, but overall it fits well. It just, like I said, fighting with some minor differences in the machine itself. It has been crashed before, and you know, the cage is brand new, so things didn't line up quite how I wanted them to. All the bolts are in the holes now though, so now it's just kind of tightening up all the rest of the bolt hole, or tightening up all the mounting bolts, and then putting on the sound bar and the rear tray thing, and then putting all the bodywork back on it. But yeah, so we're gonna get started on all that stuff. Alright, well, I've got most of this rear end put back together here. I got the tray put back on, and I got the snorkels put back in, but one really annoying thing, they did not put tabs on the cage for the shock reservoirs. And the factory clamps are only long enough to go around the reservoir and go to the factory little bracket things. So that means I'm gonna have to go find some long hose clamps or some HVAC zip ties or something, and I don't like the fact that the reservoir is riding on the cage. They spent the time to make some real nice tabs up here for the snorkel, but didn't put reservoir tabs on for the shocks. I don't know, kind of annoying on that part, but otherwise everything else is fitting together pretty nicely on it. Those tabs up top line up perfectly with the bolts for the snorkel instead of using the factory little bracket things, so that's nice. The rear tray fit just like it's supposed to, so that was easy too. The door opens and closes just like it did before. That's nice. All the bolts are in it and they're all tightened down. It looks like a solid cage. It looks really good on here, so I guess I'll have to figure out the shock mount or the shock reservoir mounts and just finish putting the bodywork back on it. Okay, next thing to take note of with this cage. There's nowhere to mount the factory seat belt. I guess the customer's gonna have to put harnesses in this thing. I don't know why they wouldn't put a tab on this thing for for the factory seatbelt, but all right, next. All right, I guess I'll touch on this seatbelt thing again real quick, but I definitely recommend putting harnesses in these things. One of the first things you should do when you do a cage, but man, really? Have to? It's another, $150 or something the customer's going to have to spend, $100 the customer's going to have to spend to put a seatbelt in this thing where, I think it should have a tab on the cage to begin with. Maybe as an option that he didn't select or something, but it's kind of a bummer, man. This customer was wanting to take this thing on a trip this weekend and wanted to have the cage on it. I guess I wish I'd have seen that before putting the cage on so we could have had a harness here in time, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. But now I got to put the rear fenders back on it, and still got to figure out the reservoir mounts too. So, alright, keep going. Alright, RS1 project is complete. We got the Hauser Racing cage on it. Put a different set of tires on it for the customer here. He wanted some bighorns back on it, other than what he had. As far as the shock reservoirs go, again, we just used some big HVAC zip ties and zip tied it to the cage. That's not ideal. I definitely don't like that, but it'll work. It's not gonna be an issue. It could damage the powder coat over time with the shock reservoir riding on it like that. But sound bars on it, snorkels are on it, seats back in it. We haven't done anything with the harness yet. We're kind of waiting on the customer to come in and take a look at this thing and decide what he wants to do as far as that goes. But otherwise, project's done. Unit looks really good, so I guess it's time to take it outside and take a couple pictures of it and get it back to the customer.